was up for re-election. However, he's not, and it's not for a while.
That's too bad. Yeah, there was a meme going around that the only thing easier to buy in the U.S. than a gun is a Republican senator.
In the legislature, it's a problem in our legislature too, because we've been trying to get better gun safety laws in Florida, working very hard to stop some of the more egregious gun bills that have been tried to be passed through. And it's been an ongoing battle because they won't even bring them to the floor for a discussion. The assault ban bill actually came up when the children were up there rallying, but there again, they didn't discuss it. They voted against even discussing it. But they did discuss and vote on a bill that said that pornography was unhealthy. So I guess pornography is considered more of a health risk than gun control and getting shot and killed. I don't know. So it's been a bit of a challenge in the Florida legislature. Yes.
I was looking through the congressional districts to see who might be the front runners of the Democrats in various districts, and was realizing that in some cases people haven't even declared yet because the deadline to declare hasn't come up yet. But it does look like there are some strong Democratic candidates in some currently red districts in the Florida 1st and the 6th and maybe the 18th and 26th. So there could be at least a few.
I mean, one of the positive, if you can say positive, one of the positive things that has come out of this is that we are getting more candidates. We are getting stronger candidates. And we are getting a lot of women candidates. So if there's positives to be taken out of it, it is that we're paying attention now. We're starting to realize the importance of running, even if it's a district that might not be automatically Democratic, and coming up with some strong candidates to do it. So people are more willing, I guess, to take the chance to run now than they were before, because the things that are happening are just too egregious to them to not make the change.
And what about the gubernatorial race? It looks like you have a lot of Democrats who are lining up to potentially run for that. Do you think there are some that are strong and that might the governorship be winnable?
Well, Gwen Graham seems very strong because she has good name recognition, obviously, because also of her father, but, her own name recognition in her own right, but also because her father is so well-liked. So she's somebody that's gotten a lot of attention, has gotten a lot of backing. She's a good fundraiser, fortunately or unfortunately seems to be extremely necessary. So she looks strong. And then there's Levine and Andrew Gillum.
Levine is the mayor of Miami Beach.
Yeah, he's doing a lot in terms of going out and doing outreach towards the Puerto Rican community that's come in to Florida, because we have a large influx of Puerto Ricans that have moved into Florida that will have an impact the voting. So he's done a lot in outreach to that community. But like I said, I think probably Gwen Graham is, if you have to pick a front runner, everything that I hear from people, that's who seems to be the one that's looked at.
That was actually something I was going to ask you about Puerto Rican migration in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria. I know there's been some talk about how many Puerto Ricans have been moving out of Puerto Rico into Florida following the hurricane and have been pretty upset, specifically at the president for his attacks on the mayor of San Juan and his refusal to be very helpful with rebuilding efforts. And so there's been some talk about whether or not that can affect the 2020 election. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what you're seeing on the ground, if you're seeing more Puerto Ricans, registering to vote, or if you think it's going to have a real impact.
I think it's something, I don't know the last figure, but something like 300,000 so far that have moved to Florida, and they seem to move the large portion in that I-4 corridor that I talked about. I think there's a lot of outreach being done to help them settle and to work with them to get jobs and to settle into the schools in the community. Darren Soto has a task force that's working on that. I do think that that's going to make a big difference because they are going to vote, and I think it's going to be hard for them to vote Republican given the circumstances by which they left Puerto Rico and what was done for them while they were there.
Do you think that the Puerto Rican community that's come in, is it possible that they won't turn out to vote in large numbers? There can be a host of reasons that people don't turn out the vote, and a lot of those tend to happen when people aren't as well settled into the community yet or don't have resources, that sort of thing. So do you think that there's a chance or that will happen, or are there groups that are making sure that these people are set up and registered to vote?
There are groups that are looking into that, and there are groups that are on the ground working on that. And like I said, there's task force, but I do think that you have a point. If for the 2018 election, that might be more of an issue than the 2020. I think by 2020, I think people will be a lot more settled than 2018 because, as you say, you need some kind of address, permanency to get yourself settled and registered. And that's, it is problematic because there are certain things like when they first come here, what the vouchers are given to them for in terms of what will FEMA reimburse them for. And there hasn't been a lot of movement into reimbursing them into leased housing. It's been more temporary hotel type housing. And so the transition has been more difficult. So yeah, they are still a lot of people are still in transition and finding jobs and things like that, even though there have been quite a few job fairs and there's a lot been done in the schooling to try and make sure everybody's integrated. But even there, kids that came from private schools in Puerto Rico, it's been harder for them when they're coming into the public system, if they were near graduation, to have, all the necessary requirements for them to graduate. So there's a lot of transitioning going along here. Education, of course, is one of the issues in Florida, not only because of the influx of Puerto Rican community and the additional strain that puts onto the limited resources of the public education system here, but it's also, finding the additional teachers that are bilingual and also the people that can help them transition from being in a situation where they had no water and lights and things like that. So that's one part, and getting more resources has been slow and problematic. And then they finally got some federal resources. But in addition to that, the public education is coming under threat because of them trying to implement voucher systems and remove sort of money out of the public education system and put them into charter schools, and even finding clever ways to put it into like private schools too. So the public education system really has come under threat in this legislative session, and it's something that's concerning in Florida.
Say some of the other issues that are really important to Floridians.
Clearly, gun control is something that is very important and been highlighted, of course, by tragedy. So that is something that is extremely important. And then the other thing that's very important is affordable housing, because there is money that should be available or is should have been put aside for affordable housing, but that money is often not used for it or siphoned off. There's the Sadowski Act, and that is when we sell our houses here, there's what they call dock stamps, and that money is a portion of that money is supposed to go to, getting affordable housing. And it's an extremely big issue because that money needs to be spent, and especially as we have more people coming in from Puerto Rico, affordable housing is even more of an issue. But now we have, even just Floridians, we have 900,000 very low income Floridians that pay like more than 50% of their income in housing. It's a big deal, and it's a big deal that to have the money go into the place it's supposed to go.
Is there still any hurricane damage in Florida, or have people mostly been able to recover?
In the district that I am, most of it, I mean, you have little bits here and there where you still see tarps on roofs and things like that. But in the area that I'm located in, we're in pretty good shape.
My in-laws have a house in the Keys, and they weren't there when the hurricane hit, and, of course we were worried about it, but their place is basically a concrete bunker. I mean, it's a condo, but it's essentially a concrete bunker, and they were very lucky. It was, they had just a little bit of damage, but the videos from when the hurricane hit the Keys were just, it looked devastating.
Yeah, I have a friend who has a place down in the Keys, and their place, and they would be praying for the concrete bunker because their place wasn't so lucky, should we say. It had quite a bit of damage, and they're still in the process of working that out and trying to get everything sorted and trying to get funds for it and get money back for stuff. And yeah, that's a big problem. But in the Orlando area, we're in pretty good shape.
Are people concerned about the effects of climate change and whether hurricane season may continue to be really bad every year?
Yeah, it's a big concern. It's a big concern because we keep rebuilding, and if you keep rebuilding without taking into consideration rising water levels, it just means more and more cost, and you're going to keep having to rebuild. So that's a big concern. The other thing that's a big concern is making sure that the areas set aside to be conserved so that we have clean water, and so that water goes, when you get lots of rain, that the water sinks in rather than causing floods. That's a big concern. That's an ongoing argument. And then we're the sunshine state, so we have sun all the time, and most people think, why aren't we utilizing that sun to the best of its ability? We could be doing better with that. We could be using solar much better than we are. So that's another issue.
And the other thing I wanted to ask about was that Florida's been in the news a lot lately about restoring voting rights for felons who have completed their time. Can you tell us what the current status of that is?
Yeah, they got, I think it was something like 733. I don't know the exact number, but they got the amount that you needed to put it on the ballot. So it will be on the ballot as an amendment to be voted on to restore nonviolent felons to have their, I mean, we're one of, I think, 4 states that don't restore their voting rights to people who have gone to jail, served their time, and come out. And usually in most states they get their rights back. They don't in Florida. So you may have something like a felony drunk driving, and you don't have your voting rights back. It won't apply for somebody who's like a violent murderer, or somebody who's, registered as a sex offender or something of that nature, but it will apply for, the people who genuinely need a second chance.
Mm-hmm. And that's a really large number of people in Florida.
Yeah, it's a concern, and it was hard fought for. People were going out every weekend, every other day, getting people to sign petitions. It took a long time and a lot of energy and a lot of people working towards it to get it on the ballot. We'll see where it goes from there, but it's on the ballot.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, of course, if it passes, but then also if that ends up making a difference in Florida politics. I've read various accounts about this is a population that is likely to vote as Democrats, but it's also a population that tends to turn out the vote in lower numbers. So, you have to sort of see if it ends up making a big difference or not. I mean, I think from a just humane perspective, these people should be allowed to vote. So I think that regardless